go and see has been a very common way of describing going to Gemba for many, many years prior to that. But he wanted us to change it. And this is a good lesson in how words can make a difference. And so we went back and we changed everything that in all of our, whether it be study tours or in our curriculum and so on, we changed it to go and observe, which most of you are familiar with. We also thought, you know, he really knows about this idea of going to Gemba and what you're supposed to learn. We wondered if, we then asked him, I said, could you do a video for us? And he said he would. Most of you have seen this, but for those who haven't, I wanted to show it. And for those who have, it's always a good reminder of what we should be doing when we go to Gemba. So I thought I'd just show you part of this and then tell you another little story related to it.
My name's Ritsuo Shingo, and I'm from Toyota City in Japan. I used to work for Toyota Motor more than 40 years. My definition of Gemba is the place where the actual thing is happening. That is Gemba, not necessarily plant. And why the Gemba is very important is almost everything is there. Problem, improvement matter, many things are there. So without knowing Gemba, just in the office, how come you find the problem or improvement area without knowing Gemba? No. So even if you are in the meeting room and calling many people to have a meeting, without seeing Gemba, in most cases, in my opinion, it doesn't work. You should go to Gemba, where the actual thing is happening. Is the most effective way to grasp the fact and find the problem and find the improvement area. Even at Toyota Motor, like a quality manager, he should know what the Gemba is, but knowing is one thing, but actually implementing, doing is another. So even at Toyota Motor, we are losing a good attitude. So even basic concept of Gemba, he doesn't understand. You should have a very big eye. That means you should watch carefully. And you should have a big ear. That means, all right, you should listen to very, very carefully, but not big mouth.
So I didn't realize how big of an impact this video was having in the world until I was at a conference, a lean healthcare conference in Amsterdam a few years ago. And one of the keynote speakers that got up was a woman who's CEO of the largest hospital group in the Scotland National Health Service. Her name is Elaine Mead, and Elaine's giving her presentation, and she's talking about how she has adopted lean within their hospitals and some of the things that she does personally. And it was mainly talking about leader standard work. And she says, one of the things I do is I go make sure I go visit every hospital and every clinic in our system on a regular basis. To me, it's my going to Gemba experience. And then she says, and when I go there, I always try to go there and with big eyes so I can look and observe and see what's going on. And I go with big ears to listen to what they have to say, but I always try to have a small mouth and not say anything and I go, yes. She saw a certain video I know of. So it's had worldwide impact, and his lessons have been, I think, have profoundly influenced many people around the world, and I'm happy to see that. And it started, at least for me, my part of this change that we see in how we go to Gemba is something that started with just a conversation about industrial tourism. So I thought you'd like that story. I'm going to go on to another story, and some of you may know this about Mr. Shingo, but he spent a good portion of his career in Toyota outside of Japan. About half the time he was either in the States for about 5 or 6 years and then in the UK for a couple of years. But he spent 13 years in China, and he ran the very first Toyota factory that was built in China. He was the plant manager of that. And then he ran another plant that was built later by Toyota, and that was the largest plant at the time that Toyota had in China. So he had a lot of experience in China. And the Shingo Institute, when I became executive director, we were doing nothing in China. And we felt uncomfortable about trying to approach China without having some sort of a sponsorship from a governmental type agency or something like that. And we were talking about how we might be able to go do that. And I said to Mr. Shingo, you know China, would you be willing to help me? And he said, yes. So we then, through one of his contacts in China, we decided to approach the China Association for Quality, and they agreed to meet with us to discuss the possibility of being a sponsoring organization in China. So we fly to Beijing, and he and I and his friend, whose name is Hulian Yi. Hulian has been on our board of advisors the last few years. So the three of us go meet the people at the CAQ. We walk up to their headquarters building. They literally rolled out a red carpet. They put this big banner up that says, welcome, Mr. Shingo. It didn't say, welcome, Ken, welcome, Shingo Institute. It didn't say anything about anybody else. It says, welcome, Mr. Shingo. And they give him a truly royal treatment. I mean, they just really deferred to him and like they were honoring him and everything else. And the first thing we did is we went on a tour, and because he had been in China for a long time, he could get along in Chinese, and Hulian, of course, is Chinese. So they assigned a translator who was mainly just translating for me, and it was a woman who had studied in the States, who was part of their marketing group. It's not a professional translator, but she was just kind of telling me what's going on. And so I took an opportunity to ask her. I said, why are they giving him such a royal treatment? The banner, the red carpet, everything. They've kind of rolled out everything for him. And she looked at me with a puzzled look on her face, and she goes, because he's a rock star. And I went, huh? So I got to be with the rock star at this meeting. And after we do the tour, we're sitting around this table that we have, the three of us, and there's about 25 senior people from the CAQ, including their entire executive team. So it's like, wow. I mean, it was just an awesome presence, and they brought out everybody to meet with him. And I was trying to be as diplomatic as possible. And when we finally got the meeting going, the guy who's the executive director of the CAQ looks over the table at Mr. Shingo, and he goes, Mr. Shingo, what do you think about the quality of products in China? And I was envisioning in my head how he might answer, and I'm hoping it was something like, you've come a long way, but there's still some opportunities for improvement, or something like that. And Mr. Shingo didn't say that. He said, he just looked right across the table, and he started shaking his head, and he goes, quality in China is no good. Boom! Like, I felt like it just reached across the table and punched him in the face. And I kind of started shrinking down in my chair. I wish I could hide under the table. And then he proceeded to tell a couple of stories. I'll relate one of them, just to give you an example of the stories he was telling to the guy at the CAQ. He said, we tried very hard to find local suppliers for our Toyota plants. And we worked with a number of different vendors to try to lift their quality level to Toyota standards. He says, but, and too many of them never got there. And they gave the example of axle manufacturers and how much time and effort that Toyota put into trying to raise the quality level of axle manufacturers in China, but they never got there. And he says, so we, even today, Toyota is still importing their axles from Japan because China's quality is no good. And so it's like, that was his punch in the face, but he had some stories and some examples around it. It turned into a wonderful conversation with the leaders, and very concretely he told them how things might be better in China if they go to the next step in their quality, and how people like Toyota would buy from more people and not import less. if they were to raise up their quality to Toyota standards. And we ended up having, we had a couple of other meetings with them before they finally agreed to sponsor the Shingo Institute in China. But it all turned out very well. But that night, I was still kind of wondering what just happened and why did he punch him in the face, in essence, and give him your quality is no good. And I asked him, I said, why did you answer that way? Wouldn't it have been better to say you've got some opportunities to improve? And he said, I found it's better to be very blunt and frank with the Chinese. And I thought, maybe it's even better to be blunt and frank with everybody. And not just the Chinese. Because what happened after he had said that, it had a very good, we got to the meat of the issue and he gave specific examples of improvements that were necessary before he could say your quality is good, because they weren't there yet. And I thought, I wonder how much time we waste as human beings by being diplomatic and maybe just skirting around and not saying to people, it's not good right now, and tell them exactly why, which is what he did. And since then, it kind of caused me a deep reflection on how many times I have not necessarily been as blunt as Mr. Shingo was that day. And I thought, that's a kind of a waste. It's a communication waste. We don't communicate as clearly as we could or as we should because we're trying to be nice rather than honest. And it made me go back to our Shingo guiding principle of respect every individual. And you can respect them more if you are more open and honest with people. And that's what Mr. Shingo had found. He had found, especially in working with Chinese, that it's better to just be open and honest. And I thought, maybe it's better with everybody. Since then, I've tried to be more open and honest, maybe a little less diplomatic, maybe a little less kind, but in some ways, I think it's more kind. It's more respectful to be open and honest with people. Now, I'm going to divert a little bit and have some fun as I continue some Shingo stories. Shigeo Shingo, every time he spoke at a conference, whenever he visited companies, either the morning of or the night before, he'd go to a local grocery store and buy a banana. He'd stick the banana inside his suit coat pocket, and then he would pull it out. And we caught that on video. He's famous for doing the banana story. For those who were alive when Shingo was alive, he's famous for telling his banana story. So I thought I would share the banana story. So Mr. Shingo, his son Ritsuo Shingo, decided he needed his own fruit story. And I'm going to show you what he came up with in just a minute, because it's kind of fun. So here's the banana story.
All American ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to see you. で、今話があったんですが、まず一番最初、皆さんたちこれをご存知ですか？ This is banana.
Banana.
果物へ行くとですね、このバナナの全体の重さで金を要求します。しかしこのバナナはですね、46% は皮の重さです。皆さんたちは金を得てバナナを買うときになぜ食べれないバナナの皮に対して金を払いますか？アメリカもヨーロッパもですね、そして残念ながら日本もですね、バナナの皮に金を払っています。私はアメリカ、ヨーロッパ、その他の世界の国々にですね、バナナの皮は食べれないということを教えに回っています。
So he always used that as a way of showing that there's waste that we don't think about or don't see, and he wanted to make sure people got their minds on you're accepting something that you. Now, on the flip side, though, Shingo never came up with a solution to the problem of what to do with the banana meat after you take the banana peel off, other than you have to buy the banana with the peel on and then eat it after you open it up and throw the peel away. He didn't solve his problem. He just wanted everybody to know we're paying for waste. And how many times do we do that? That's the lesson that I think he was trying to teach all of us through his banana story that he gave every time. But so at any rate, he was famous for the banana story. And so Mr. Shingo Ritso came up with the cucumber story. And we some of you may have heard this. He shared it a couple of times in the fireside chats that he's done over the years. And we thought, we need to capture this on video so we have it as a legacy of the Institute. So this is the first public airing of Mr. Shingo and his cucumber story.
My name is Ritsuo Shingo. I'm a son of Shigeo Shingo, and Shigeo Shingo is very famous for his banana story. Then, several years ago, I created the cucumber story. The why I created cucumber story when I visited Paul Acres plant. I have heard from the plant people that quite often they should throw away the products due to the deviation of color. I think at that time the standard is blue. Anyway, color is different, then throw away. And I asked the function. That is a very small product to measure the thickness of anything, table or something. Anyway, measurement. And I asked what was the function? Oh, they said, function, no problem. Just color. Oh, really? Next day, I took Paul Acre to the shopping center. Then both Paul Acre and me tried to find the straight cucumber and curved cucumber.
You have to pretend a little bit right here.
Straight one, no, normally straight one. But fortunately, we could find a little bit curved cucumber. So we bought both straight cucumber and curved cucumber and brought back to the plant. I have shown these two cucumbers to the plant people. Straight one and curved one. You're throwing away the curved one. The taste is same. That means function is same. At that time, I stayed at the hotel where in the morning they served cucumber water. They put the sliced cucumber inside the water. I could not tell whether originally they are straight or curved. No, I couldn't tell. I don't care. The customer don't care. Then it's okay. So I showed two cucumbers to the plant people, straight one and curved one. Don't throw it away. Please discuss this matter with your customer. Some standard color, like a blue, something a little bit different from blue, whether the customer can accept or not. My proposal of method is the set the limit sample this way and that way. Then maybe you might largely reduce to throw away your products just due to the color difference. That is I think my message. In other way, I might say you might communicate with your downstream customer or sometime upstream, your suppliers. Then you might improve. Please compare straight cucumber and curved cucumber and try to think
not to throw away. Curved cucumber. The quality is the same. So that is my cucumber story. Banana story is very famous. Cucumber story, not famous at all. Because that is my story. Thank you very much.
So I have to explain one thing in there. The word in Japanese for blue and green is the same word. They think of green as a shade of blue. And so when he says blue, he is actually saying green. So you may have thought it was weird when he said cucumbers are blue, but he was translating in his head rather than thinking in English. His English is slipping, as you might be able to tell from the time he spent in the States. But that's a common Japanese thing is calling green blue because they're the same in Japanese. So at any rate, I want to share with you another story and then show another video. After we signed the documents with the CAQ and kind of accomplished our purpose of me asking him for this favor I asked him for, we were in Japan on a study tour. This is a month or two after we went to Beijing and signed the final documents, and everything went well. And in Japan, and he invites me over to his house for dinner, and his wife makes this wonderful dinner, and then he's driving me back to the hotel. And we're stopped at a stoplight for a second. He looks over at me and he goes, "Now that I've done you a favor, can I ask a favor of you?" And like, how am I going to say no after he's gone way out of his way to help us solve what I thought was a fairly significant problem? And so I said, "Sure, what is it?" And he says, "Can you help me publish my book?" And I said, "Sure." So that gave me the opportunity to hear story after story of his experiences in China. And to me, those experiences that he had when he was, he tells a few other stories in the book, but most of the book, and that's why it's called My Leadership, the China Years, is about the things that he did with the organizations that he led in China. And there's lots of great ones. I'm just going to share one example. He uses the term, show them your back. That's his way of saying you lead by example and people will follow you. And he gives lots of examples. I'm just going to share one example of that to give you a flavor for the types of stories he tells. Because of his rank within Toyota, they provide company cars for senior executives. And he had the right to go get a new Toyota Camry as his company car that was just part of the perk package that he had for being the senior leader. But it was a startup and they were losing money and losing a lot of money. And he said, "I told everybody we got to keep expenses down." He says, "I couldn't in good conscience go get a brand new Toyota Camry, $35,000, $40,000. I just inherited a car from the previous manager and it was a used Chinese car." And I said, I decided to just drive that. And that was a big thing to everybody else who was watching him because they saw that he was making his own personal sacrifices, not doing, taking advantage of the perks that he could have taken advantage of, but would have cost the company money. And as a result, by showing them show them your back, it was his way of saying we need to keep expenses at a bare minimum so that we can reach profitability as quickly as possible and make the organization sustainably, financially stable. And so it's those kind of stories, and there's numerous stories in the book. So I encourage you to read it, and we have it available on our website and in other places. But it was a great learning experience for me to be able to see through his life experiences and his leadership style, how he embodied the guiding principles of the Shingo model. So I asked him, when we got it all done, we got all the stories told, I said, you have so many great stories that tie into the Shingo guiding principles. Is it okay if we just outline that and explain that as part of the book? And he said, sure. So I got to go through and say, okay, well, let's put, here's some of these guiding principles in action. Here's some of these guiding principles in action. That was a great experience for me to help him get the book published. So I'm a firm believer that recognition is something that should happen at a time when it makes a difference to the person being recognized. And Mr. Shingo, since he's still around, and we decided we wanted to make sure that we thank him and recognize him for what he's done, we decided as a group to put together a Thank You, Mr. Shingo video. And we thought that this is just the staff of the university and the staff of the Shingo Institute, and a video we put together a few weeks ago for Mr. Shingo. Since he's not able to be here in person, we shared it with him, and he thought, he wondered if he was at his funeral or not. And we told him, no, we just want to thank you before you're actually at your funeral. And he said, well, thank you. That's nice of you to do that while I'm still around. So we thought we would share that with you, and it tells us some great stories and gives some examples of Mr. Shingo and the great example he's been to all of us and the lessons that he's taught us. So I share that with you now.
My name is Ritsuo Shingo.
My name is Ritsuo Shingo.
Hello. My name is Ritsuo Shingo. I'm from Toyota City in Japan. I used to work for Toyota Motor more than 40 years. I'm a son of Shigeo Shingo.
Ritsuo,
This
you
is
are
my
the
boss.
standard for us. For more than 30 years, our university has been blessed by its association with the Shingo family. First with your great father, and then with you.
Mr. Shingo was a friend right off the bat.
I just hit it off with him immediately. Just a very thoughtful and engaging person.
He's kind and loving and knowledgeable about so many things, and he questions everything. He's always learning. That's something that's very prominent with him.
He never referred to himself as I'm an expert in this or that. It was always a very humble reference of I have experiences, I have life experiences, and I hope those will help you.
He has a very global perspective of things, and that comes from him having worked for 5 or 6 years in the States, then working a few more years in the UK, and then working for 13 years in China.
My favorite memory with Mr. Shingo is when I was able to introduce him to my family. He came to my home and met my kids and talked with them a little bit, wanted to know about things that they were interested in life. And I remember afterward, every single time I met him or I talked to him on the phone or emailed back and forth, he always was asking about my family.
We'd be at a facility, for example, that we were visiting on a tour, and I would say, okay, we've only got, about 10 more minutes. And he would always look at me and say, I know I'm over my 10 minutes, but I really want to tell them this story. And he would proceed to tell them that story, of course, which was always value added to the participants.
We're at his house in Japan, and then he's taking me back to my hotel in his car, and he says, I did you a favor. Can you do me a favor? And he said, I need help publishing my book. Will you help me?
He, had so many great lessons learned in his lifetime, and that he was always trying to share those with others.
It was my pleasure to work with Mr. Shingo to help him get this book published. It's largely stories in China about how he took Toyota's first major investment in China and turned it into a profitable manufacturing company. And just working with Mr. Shingo to hear his stories was a very enjoyable experience for me.
The most valuable thing I think I've learned from Mr. Shingo is simply to always ask questions.
Every place we went, he was always an example of that. Asking questions first, being quiet, thinking about the different responses that came in before talking about what the problem or issue might be.
Whenever we go to anywhere together, one of the first things he will do is look in the garbage can. I asked him the first time I saw him do that, I go, why are you looking in the garbage can? And he goes, we're all looking for waste, aren't we? Well, this is where they put the waste. I want to see what the waste looks like. And so now I find myself every once in a while just looking in the garbage can and saying, oh, what waste did they create here? That might create some good questions to ask them.
With how much people love to invite him to things and want him to be there to be able to talk about his experiences. He's still so humble about it.
He's just an extremely accomplished person, and yet I never see him not listen to somebody. I never see him think he knows the right answer to everything. His life is one of success, but his approach in interacting with people is one of humble leadership.
He opened so many doors for us.
It's been invaluable to us to have him on board, not only on the advisory board, but also so engaged and so involved with the things that we do at the Institute, to give of his time to help us as we try to help organizations.
He never asked for money in return. It was just his way of giving back and, you know, helping other people succeed in life.
There's a word in Japanese that he and I like to talk about when we are chatting over dinner or something like that. It is a word called ikigai, and it loosely translates into English as meaning in life, okay? Reason to exist, reason to live. It became especially poignant at a time when my daughter was killed in an automobile crash. And we were talking about how that had affected me and how that had changed to a large degree my own personal meaning in life, and how some things I just didn't find any meaning in anymore, activities I was doing, and some other things I felt I had to do because of my meaning in life had shifted. And he said to me, and this was one of the coolest things he ever said, he says, you know, helping the Shingo Institute, this is my ikigai. That just tells you where he got his ikigai from, was in helping others, such as the Institute, or helping those who are in development, and not necessarily out of just selling something. And I'm glad that he shared that with me. It made me smile, and it's made me think a lot about how our shared ikigai has been the basis of our friendship over the years. It really has.
Ritsuo, I want you to know how much I admire you as a professional, as a friend of this great university, and as a human being.
I want him to know how he's changed me and changed some of the world for the better.
Thank you for being an example to people. Thank you for being an example to me. Thank you for giving of your time and your talents and everything, really. Just thank you for being a friend. You've been a great friend to me. You've been a great friend of the Institute, and I know that you've touched a lot of people's lives.
We've gotten to be really good friends. He has supported me personally in my role at the Shingo Institute. He has supported the Institute in so many ways that have brought value to us, through curriculum, through our conference, through even the fireside chats he does, through all the different activities he's done. And he's never asked for anything other than he's donated his time and effort to do that. So I just want to give him a big thank you.
Well, he is a great example of building a great culture in the organizations that he built, but also of helping us and helping, I think, many of you build that same kind of culture within your own organization. So thought it would be worthwhile to just share some Ritsuo Shingo stories as part of a living example of building a culture of growing and enduring excellence. So that's my presentation. I want to thank you for coming. I have a few minutes to do some Q&A if anybody wants to ask some questions. It doesn't have to be about Mr. Shingo or even Shigeru Shingo, his father. It can be about the Shingo Institute or anything else that you may be curious about. But I need to put my glasses on so I can see. I'm one of those people who has to take them off to read and put them on to see things that are like out there, other than just general shapes. And I got light in my eyes anyway, so I got to do this. Questions? No?
We've got some on
Online?
Whova that we could go through.
All right, Nate, tell me what they are.
So we'll start with one from Amanda Fasano. What advice would you give to an organization who is really early in their journey to move away from, quote, "that's how it's always been done," end quote, and look at lean/continuous improvement to help improve operations and increase efficiency?
Well, there's any one of a number of people in this audience who could answer that question at least as well as I could, if not much better. This is a really common problem that we see out in industry, and there's a couple of key things. One is you need to get leaders, at least some group of leaders on board, and if that doesn't happen, it's really hard for the rest of the people to do it by themselves without leadership support. If you're trying to get your leaders to buy in, the best thing to do is try some things so that they can see how much of a difference it makes. And maybe they will buy in, but that's still just a trial and error. You hope you get attention and they can appreciate the good things that you're doing. If your organization is committed to an ongoing effort to improve and become excellent, we really highly recommend that people get trained properly in how to do that. That includes some basic lean training, but when they're ready and understand some of the ways they might be able to go about doing it, we highly recommend the Shingo workshops that will help you build that right kind of culture of excellence within your organization. We have some really great examples we're going to celebrate tonight of people who started, in many ways from scratch and have reached a level of Shingo Prize. And we have, it's nice to be able to be together and be able to celebrate the great achievements of those recipients tonight. So come join us for our celebration event and listen to their stories, because they can tell you what they did to get from that beginning point to a really high level of performance. Another question? I don't see anybody with their hand up or standing up. Any more from online, Nate?
Hello, hello. Hey, it's working. Right here. Can you hear me? I can hear myself.
I can hear something. I don't know where you are.
I'm to your left, if you're trying to look for me. This guy waved
at
you.
Oh, way over there. I'm looking in the wrong place. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all right. So my name is Tyrone Branch. I'm from Discover Financial Services. I guess my question is, like, the nature of work is changing, right? So we're not all making bananas. We have folks that are doing financial transactions. Sometimes the Gemba is a Zoom call. And I think it can be difficult to apply these principles to a different kind of work for those that aren't really exposed to the lean world. So my question for you is, like, how have you seen this, like, these principles, this model being applied in other services, like a tech company or anything like that? Have you seen it, like, proliferate more beyond just manufacturing and also healthcare?
Oh, yes, and matter of fact, the history of the Shingo Prize is when we started, it was mainly North American, mainly manufacturing. As a matter of fact, for the first 10 years, I don't think we had any applicants for the Shingo Prize that weren't North American manufacturers. And now about half of our applicants are not manufacturing, and about 70% of our applicants are outside of the United States. So we have seen a broad spread across a number of industries, and a broad spread especially to all regions of the world. And so with this, we get a chance to see how it impacts in different cultures. We get to see how it impacts in different industries. And your question is mainly about different industries. I spend, well, not so much during the pandemic, but for the few years prior to the pandemic, I spent as much time in hospitals helping them learn how to apply the principles in a healthcare setting, which is a kind of service, but also has a lot of other different requirements, as I did in manufacturing facilities. I'm a manufacturing guy. I spent 30 years in industry running plants and manufacturing companies. So that's my background, but in many cases it looks different. That's what I'll say. It looks different, but the principles are the same. And let me just give an example. One-piece flow in a factory is pretty easy to see. You can see a piece go down and there's a certain amount of cycle time and perhaps if you're really good tack time to it and so on. Tack time doesn't work in hospitals. You don't even want to come up with that concept because it doesn't fit the needs and it doesn't help solve problems. As a matter of fact, it creates problems. I've seen a place where they tried to do tack time and it was a disaster. As you can imagine, every 7 minutes you see another patient. Like, well, some patients you might need to spend 45 minutes with, and some of them. So it's just one of those things that does not work. But flow is the principle, and flow in a manufacturing setting looks very different than flow in a healthcare setting. What should flow look like in a hospital? Yeah, so let me give an example of what it can look like. One of the hospitals that I visited focused on not just, there's a lot of hospitals that put up waiting time for their emergency department. And they have billboards out on the freeway saying, our wait time right now on our ED is X minutes. They're measuring the wrong thing. They're saying, how much time does it take for you to, when you come in and you sit down and you wait to be served, time for them to check you in is what they're measuring. That doesn't count. What counts is time from when you walk in the door to when you see a caregiver. And that doesn't count checking in, because checking in is a waste when it comes to somebody who needs care and they're in an emergency room. So one of the hospitals that I've worked with started measuring the time to see the caregiver. And their average time they discovered was 23 minutes, and they got it down to 5 minutes. From the time the person walks in the ED door to the time they're sitting right in front of a caregiver. And they took out all the waste in that flow and got it down to where, at the time, this was before the pandemic, I'm not quite sure where they're at right now because I haven't had a chance to go back, but that's what it looks like. The principle is the same in financial services. How quickly do you process a transaction from the time that you have the request from your customer to the time that the transaction, same is true for an insurance company, a different kind of financial transaction, but how much time do you deliver on a claim? Is it 45 days or is it same day, same phone call? And so the principles work everywhere, Tyler. So I think it's a great question, but you have to think through how those principles apply in your industry. And we see some really great examples of it throughout the world in every industry. But a great question. Thank you for asking it. Other questions?
Yeah, Ken, another one.
Yes.
This is from Jeff Albee. What advice do you give organizations when they embark on a lean journey for quick wins rather than sustainable long-term enterprise transformation?
Quick wins have a role because they can be used to leverage and get people excited about the long-term journey that's ahead. And you need to get people on board. So quick wins is not a bad thing. It's a good thing as you try to build support and interest, and you've got some people that you want to kind of tip from the reluctant, why are we trying to mess things up here? And I'm really comfortable with the way things are. And how do you get them over to the, I want to be engaged and I want to be making this place a better place? And tipping them over there, sometimes it takes some quick wins to do that. And we've seen some people who really have launched those quick wins, won the support, and then they're able to build that enduring long-term culture. So there is a role, but it is one step. But you've got to have a clear journey towards accomplishing the purpose, that long-term purpose and the long-term journey as you seek perfection and you make those incremental steps or some of the big steps towards improving the organization. So I don't think the two are opposed. I think one is a step of getting to the other. Other questions? Let me just close with a Shigeru Shingo story because it's related to the questions we've been getting. That video I showed you of him holding the banana up was when he came to receive an honorary doctorate from our university, and we asked him for permission to use his name to start the Shingo Prize. We did, we're the land-grant institution. I don't know if that means anything to those who are not from the states, but it's a special designation that the federal government and the state governments make of schools. But it means they have a responsibility to teach throughout the entire state. And so our university is the land-grant institution for the state of Utah. We have 28 different campuses, one main campus where most of the students attend, but then 27 other campuses where there's anywhere from 500 to 1,000 students on those campuses distributed throughout the state. As a result, we built this really sophisticated satellite system back in the 1980s. And we decided if Shingo is going to come, let's just utilize this satellite system and give people the settings to be able to enjoy the satellite system. So that banana story you saw was Shigeo Shingo at this satellite broadcast. And we set up an 800 number call-in, and he was there being with a moderator and a translator. The translator, incidentally, was a young Drew Dillon, for those who know Drew. That was Drew, 40 years ago. But so at any rate, we had people call in, and the call lasted 4 hours, and we have the whole video. So I'm sitting there watching the video. The first time I had a chance to watch the whole 4 hours, I sat down and watched it. And the funny thing is, about half hour into it, somebody calls up and said, I'm having a real difficult time getting the senior leaders in our organization to buy into this change effort that we're trying to drive, but the senior leaders aren't getting on board. Do you have any ideas on how we could get senior leaders involved? And Mr. Shingo said, well, show some great results, and they'll be attracted to it, and they'll support you. You've got to show them some results first, though. So fast forward, and another half hour later, somebody calls up and says, we're having a real hard time getting our senior leaders to buy into our efforts on this. Do you have any ideas on how we might be able to do that? And you kind of see his face like, didn't they ask this question, and didn't I answer it already? But he says the same thing over again. You got to show them some results, and once you show them some results, they'll buy in. Go for it about another half hour. Somebody calls in and says, we're having a real hard time. 3.5 to 4 hours, we're nearing the end of it. And for the 6th time, somebody calls in and says, we're having a real hard time getting our senior leaders to buy into this. And by then, Shingo lost his patience. You could see, like, 6 times, really? They asked the same question 6 times, and finally, he just had it, and you could just kind of tell, like, why aren't they listening to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th time I've answered this question? And he goes, look, if they don't care about making money, it's hopeless. And that's his whole answer for the 6th time answering the same question. So if you can't get your leaders involved, eventually it's hopeless, but at least give it 6 times before showing results 6 times, and maybe they'll buy into it. So at any rate, I'll leave that as a final parting thought on Shigeo Shingo and Ritsuo Shingo. Thank you so much for coming to conference. We're looking forward to spending the next 2 days with you. And we're going to go straight to the next keynote. So I'm going to turn over, it'll take a second to transition, but sit tight, and we'll be moving ahead with the program right now. And with that, I'm going to turn it over. So thank you so much.